Good morning everyone, welcome back to my Jessie Chorley the garden panel stitch along series. I believe this is video number 4. So in this video I want to focus on my tree. Previous video I had shown you how I had stitched down the actual tree itself using some twine and then a thicker piece for the actual tree trunk and just couched it into position. So now I'm starting to think about all of the little leaves, and I've selected 3 fabrics to create the little leaves. This one is like a suede that would probably be on furniture, because on the back, I picked it up somewhere, it's written suede by Warwick. Now Warwick is in Australia anyway, is a brand of fabric for covering upholstery fabrics for furnishings. So it's beautiful, great colour and got that suede texture. It is a little bit of a bugger to stitch through. It's very dense, so I have to make sure I have a very fine needle, if not even a beading needle, so that it just slithers straight through the fabric. Then I picked out a darker green just from my scraps bucket, and in there is a lighter green as well. So they sort of go together, a little bit of a mix of colours and tones there, and within these 2 fabrics there's additional shapes and textures from the design, so some leaves and dots and dashes and things. So that should help give a little bit of interest to my little leaves. So what I've been doing is pretty much cutting a little leaf to cover where Jessie has placed a leaf on her sketch. There's, I haven't traced them and reproduced them exactly. I sort of wanted to keep it pretty simple and fluid. So all I'm doing is sort of working out what colour fabric I want to do next. I was going to just about do that one there, but I've decided to leave him because it sits on top of that dress. I think when I do the dress and whatever happens on that edging, the little leaf will then sit on top. So I'm actually going to skip that one. It can be added at a later date because it's like in the foreground and we really need to do the background first. But even this one here I might skip as well because it's just covering the edge of her little skirt there. So we'll move on to this one, and being that I've already placed this guy, I'm going to go the lighter fabric. So I sort of just lay the fabric over the leaf and just get in my mind a bit of an idea of what the shape of the leaf is required. Then it's really a little bit of trial and error. I try and make it probably even bigger than what it needs to be, because you can always trim it back. And look, at the end of the day, if it's not right and it just doesn't fit, don't worry about it. Don't use it or pop it somewhere else. So that's pretty good. I've covered most of Jessie's lines, so I'm happy with that. There was a couple I made that were just not the right size, like that one there. There's the big suede one in behind, and then this little guy, he just didn't fit. So I ended up creating a new leaf on top of my design that was not a Jessie leaf. It was just a little, there it is there, a little scrappy one that just didn't quite work out. So I put him on top of the original Jessie leaf underneath. I think it happened somewhere else as well. There was an extra leaf added. Where did I do that? Can't quite remember. It might have been here. It might have been this guy here. The suede one is a Jessie leaf, and then that was just one that didn't quite work out, so I just popped it there. Yeah, that's him. That's the 2 of them, which they, unless I told you, you'd never know. Okay, so I've cut this little fellow. Now, when I started stitching down the leaves, I've done a couple down the bottom. They're not in the shot at the moment. I'll move in a minute. The fabric that I've chosen for these leaves is very fine, so it's fraying quite easily. So I've just been using a little bit of fabric glue. It comes on this stick, nearly like a glue stick you'd use in the paper crafting. And I'm just putting a little bit of that glue in behind. It'll do 2 things. It'll hold it in position for me so that I can stitch them down, but it'll also help adhere the edges of the cut edges of the leaf from fraying, because I don't want the leaf just to disintegrate. So that will now hold it. So I've gone and actually adhered all of those So then I can just come back with a needle and thread and then do a little tacking down stitch. So I've got one more to go here. I think I'll use this lighter fabric again. So I'm just placing it over the leaf, having a bit of a look, and with a bit of a imagination, cutting roughly the shape and trying to go a little bit bigger than probably what is needed. If this concerns you and you want it to be a little bit more accurate, by all means get some maybe baking paper or tracing paper, and you can trace then Jessie's leaf exactly and then add it to your fabric, draw around it and snip it out. So that's definitely a way to go. But I don't want to spend too much time. There's so much work here to do on this piece. And if I start getting bogged, I'm just trimming that just a little bit. If I start getting bogged down on some of these details, I honestly think I'll lose interest. And it just will go into the cupboard and, yeah, not come out as regular as I like. And then, of course, you don't get to start a new project. So you sort of got to keep forging on. Try not to overthink it. Now, my leaves that I'm adding are definitely bigger in size and structure than what Jessie's drawn on this panel. But I think that's okay. I think that's actually going to happen with a lot of it. Like Jessie's dress here is so fine and in structure, but I think by the time I add fabrics and embroidery, it will bulk out. The whole piece is, the whole piece is going to do that, I think. So that's all my leaves cut and stuck into position. So now it's a case of embroidering them. Now I picked up some cotton that was just lying on my desk. It's a colour that matches, and I'm just taking out one of the strands because I want to keep it quite fine, and threading a needle. And I'll just bring this up to the camera, and all I've done is just one vein of stitch on each leaf. I did the one underneath first, straight through, then the suede leaf, and then the second one. I'm just going to leave it at that. You could go crazy and do all sorts of embroidery on these leaves, but what I want to do is actually more work on a vine that is going throughout the whole tree. And as you can see with my red pen there, I've already started to sketch in where this rainforest vine that's creeping up this tree might be sending out its, what's the word, not talons, tangles. Anyway, it's meandering up the branch of the tree. So I want my leaves to actually be in the background and a little bit subtle. So I'm not going to do any heavy embroidering on them themselves. Plus there's 3 fabrics here. There's already enough going on with the different fabrics to give me a nice effect, I think. At this stage, that's my theory. Okay, so I will now stop the video and just continue on stitching these all down. They're all into position. They're going to hold nicely there with this, what do they call this? Sew line glue. I see a lot of quilters use this when they're doing English paper piecing. It just allows the fabric to be folded over and a little bit of glue to hold things into position for the embroidery of stitching together those pieces. So yeah, so far so good. Really enjoying this. Another thing that I found, I might just mention now, I think it's going to appear in this work, is I found this piece of fabric. I don't know where I got it from. I'd honestly say this is some years old. And it's just like labels with words on them. And it just matches beautifully. So when I was sort of rummaging through a cupboard looking for something, this popped up. So I've just grabbed it out and I'm going to put it to one side and sort of just glance at it and thinking maybe some of these labels I might cut out and add to the piece somewhere. Not sure where or if I do, but just thought I'd mention it, that if you are doing this panel, just always keep your eyes open for bits and pieces that sort of match your color tone. It may not be where you started, where you end up. Can be 2 different journeys with this embroidery. But yeah, keep your eyes open. You never know what may come across your path and think, oh yes, that might just work on my Jessie panel. Okay guys, I'm going to leave it at that. The next bit that you will see will be the tree stitched down with the leaves, and I will have started to think about my vine and what I'm going to use and how I'm going to create it. Okay, I'll see you all very soon. Bye. Hello everyone, I'm back just with an update on our tree. I've gone around now and stitched down all of the leaves, and I've just used a simple running stitch straight down the center of the leaf. Decided not to embellish them too much because I wanted the vine to be the treatment that you see when you look at this tree. I might come back in the future and I could do all sorts of little fancy stitches on those leaves. That's the beautiful thing about this piece, that you can just do the basics now and then keep coming back as time goes and just adding bits and pieces. So the vine has come together quite well. I had sketched in, you may notice in the first section of this video, I had sketched it in on every tree branch. After I started, I sort of backed that down a little bit. So the vine is only on these two at the top. I then skipped a branch, then I did this one, and these two, I only did a little bit just peeking out from the center of the tree. It just sort of felt a little bit more natural, where when I kept looking at my red pen, it's like, oh yes, that's a typical drawing of a vine. That's probably not what happens in nature. So I ended up just doing a little bit in a few spaces. As you can see, I've couched down some crochet cotton, that's the brown, with just some cream thread. Then I went back and did clusters of beads in random spots. So these ones here are like 6mm beads, and there's a silver, a gold, a pearly cream, and then another little silver one. So I just did like random little embellishments, and then I went back with a smaller bead and in a few spots joined back into that cluster just some little cream ones, like especially where the vine curled at the end. I popped 3 little beads, just sort of softened the whole bead process. This red fabric here is sari silk. I had a tiny scrap on my desk and I just cut little rectangles out, squished it together in my fingers and just stitched it down. I just felt that the vine, the tree, looked very plain. And because this piece is just going to be busting with colours and, you know, all sorts of embellishments, I felt like the vine was the perfect spot to add this little tuft of red, as if there's some flowers connected to that. And I really feel like it's lifted it beautifully. So I'm very happy with the tree. As I said, I might come back in the future and do some more embellishments on the leaves themselves, but at the moment I'm moving on. I am working on seed stitch still, and while I was in this zone and a movie was popped on, I just picked up the needle and thread and started some seed stitch. I do plan to do the whole piece, but that is going to be an epic task in itself. So whenever I just don't feel like doing anything full on like a tree or a big flower treatment, I just get some cream, needle and thread and just start working on seed stitch. And I did a little bit more through the side of the flower there. There's hours and hours of work, but it's a really good stitch to have up your sleeve, that if you want to do something but don't feel like having the whole creative process, just cream thread and 1 needle and away you go. So in that process, I come across this little flower, and I had a little bit of this ribbon in my craft box. So I thought I'll just use it there. It was only a piece, it was about 15 centimeters long. And I just did some stab stitches with it. There's no lazy daisy, there's no intricate stitch there. I literally just come up, down to the top, and then repeat. I think it did it 3 times in each leaf. I'm not yet sure what will happen there, or even the stem, but no rush, just thinking about it all. In addition to the vine, I come back to the main leaf here, and another day came by where I just didn't feel like doing too much. So I decided I'd seed stitched over here, and I decided that I'd keep working through here. So I had put this braid on that had these little rosettes attached. I did not make that braid, it was one that I already owned. And then I come down the side, just to the one side of it, with just some little random seed stitches. And then I got my beads out and I put some of those little green beads in there as well. I don't think I'll do anything else to this leaf now. I'm pretty happy with the way that looks. It's like this leaf is very simple, but this leaf is a little bit more ornate and decorated. This sort of reminds me of a candy Easter egg where they put that squiggly icing to join the two halves together around it. So I don't know, Easter's coming up. Maybe that's what I had in my mind when I created that leaf. But like I said, this piece has just got some random areas on there, and it's a really, really good piece to sort of try different things. Two leaves don't have to be the same. There's no rules. If there's a day where you feel like just doing a little bit of basic stitching, that's where the seed stitch can come in. There's literally weeks and weeks and weeks of seed stitch, but if I do a little bit at a time, whenever I feel like a little bit of stitching, I think it'll actually all just come together at the end. Well, that's the theory anyway. Okay, I will leave the video at that. My next area that I'm going to start thinking about is the bottom corner to the tree. I had planned to putting some flowers down there, so I might, I've got a little bit of this green ribbon left, so I might sort of start drifting down there and having a think about what I can sort of put together to create a floral treatment at the base of our tree. Okay, I'll leave it at that. Thanks for popping in and checking on my progress, and I will see you all soon. Bye-bye.